Whoever drinks beer, he is quick to sleep. Whoever sleeps long does not sin. Whoever does not sin enters heaven. Thus, let us drink beer.
Welcome back to the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions, weekly held about Christianity, the church, and beer. I'm your host, Tim Curley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Colton Pierce. Colton, how's it going?
It's going okay. My manager is going to get sacked this week. It's not imminent, apparently, according to a new ESPN article, but everybody feels like it's coming. But Manchester United won the FA Cup. We beat City for it on Saturday, and it was a great day. It's always great when you beat Manchester City, especially nowadays. Anybody that beats Manchester City, it feels really good. Other than that, started running this weekend. I've been telling you guys that I've been working out pretty steadily, and I was kind of exhausted, but then I was just like, I'm not exhausted enough, so let's just toss running in on the mix here. No, you got that. I'm sure we're going to be drinking plenty this evening. So started running. Went for a run again today. My knee is like jacked up. I don't know if it's because I haven't ran in a long time, or if I'm just like stepping wrong, or whatever. I don't know what I'm gonna do. If I need to take a couple days off, I'm only on day 4 in a row of running, and I'm already like injured. Like, gosh dang it. I was in a lot of pain running yesterday. I was in a lot of pain running today, and I'm like, oh man, this sucks. So I'm like limping around everywhere right now. But other than that, I'm doing good. My kids are like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm getting old, kids.
You're not used to running on the sidewalk, concrete.
Yeah, the body's just not, it's not ready for that shock. That's for sure. And I jacked up my knees a couple years ago, and water polo players are known for having bad knees. So it's just kind of like, it's all coming together.
Ice, baby, ice.
That's right. How are you doing, Tim?
Good. Pretty good Memorial Day. A couple of your friends were over at our place pretty much all day yesterday.
I was over for a bit.
Not yesterday, day before. Yeah, you were over for a little bit. Doing the triple header. Monaco Grand Prix, Indianapolis 500, and the Coke 600, and it was pretty exciting until the Coke 600 got rained out right when Kyle. So if you're not familiar with motorsports, Kyle Larson's a NASCAR driver. He was trying to do the Indianapolis 500 in the morning, hop on a helicopter, go to the airport, take that to Charlotte, hop on a helicopter, go to the NASCAR track, and then do that race. So it's 500 miles for the IndyCar race, 600 miles for the NASCAR race, and do the doubleheader. The doubleheader's been done 3 or 4 times before. Michael Andretti did it, Robbie Gordon, and maybe Jeff Gordon. No, not Jeff Gordon. I think maybe 3 times. Nope, Tony Stewart. Yeah, Tony Stewart, Robbie Gordon, Michael Andretti, I think, and Kurt Busch have all done it. So Kyle was trying to do it, and Indy 500 got delayed by rain, so they were able to work it out where a guy raced Kyle's car in the NASCAR race for the first half, and right when Kyle got to the track, lightning hit. They stopped the race, which you're required to do for any sporting event now, I think, in the United States. I think it's by law. Because they're worried about all
of those athletes that have gotten struck by lightning, right?
They're worried about the fans being in metal, predominantly, or metal, or out in the open and high. So they paused the race, and then rain hit and just doused it, and so they just ran out of time. They could not get the track dry. They were I think still trying at like 1 a.m. Charlotte time, and they finally had to give up because it was too humid, and they just gotten drenched with water. So that was unfortunate, but otherwise it was a fun weekend. Spent all 3 Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday in the pool at some point for a while. So spent some on Sunday in between the races. A couple of us got in there while we were waiting for the rain delay. So it was good. Good time. So, what are we drinking tonight?
Which is a Fremont, based out of Seattle, collab with Weldwerks Brewing, which I don't know where Weldwerks is based out of.
That's either San Diego or Anaheim. I can't remember. That's my guess, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it is a 8% alcohol by volume, hazy double IPA. Okay, so it's a double, so that makes a little bit more sense.
Oh, totally wrong. Completely wrong.
Where's it at?
Greeley, Colorado, home of Northern Colorado University.
Coming in with also a Douglas Adams quote on the can. If you try and take a cat apart to see how it works, the first thing you have on your hands is a non-working cat. Very similar to if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, I did not know where Weldwerks was, but I am aware of Weldwerks as a brewery, and it's got a pretty good reputation as being a brewery that puts out high quality, I think experimental stuff as well. So I think they're kind of in the vein of Bottle Logic which is down in Anaheim near Disneyland. So this is really good for a hazy. This is what a hazy should be. It's got a lot of flavor. It's thick. I mean, it's got stuff like sitting in there. It's like a snow globe that got frozen.
Well, and then
it looks like the beer got frozen if you don't move because it's just stuff sitting there. It shows how dense the beer is. But I really like this. I think this is kind of the hazies that when they first came out, I was like, oh, I really like this.
Yeah. And Fremont is a brewery based out of Seattle. If you go anywhere in Seattle, they have a Fremont beer there at all times. That's the typical IPA that you'll find anywhere in Seattle. So, it's all good stuff, though.
Nice bite on the back.
Yeah, it's good.
It's got a little bitterness on the back.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweeter, lusher on the front, and bitter fruit on the back. So that's really well done.
Would absolutely drink again.
Okay, music of the week. Colton and I are starting. This is going to be a segment. I don't know how long this will take. It'll be up to me. I think Colton's got more time on his hands getting through music than I do. So what we're doing, Apple, blah, blah, blah. Colton texted me a week ago, last 6 days ago. Yeah, last Wednesday. Hey, did you see Apple Music's top 100 list? I said, no, I hadn't.
Because it dropped last Wednesday.
Found it, which is complaint number one. Apple, what the hell? Why is this on... okay, put it on the web, but how is this not in your app? It's so dumb. Like on the app, it's each album that's on there, it says it's on its list, and then it's like if you go see Gaga, like that album that's on the list is right there. It's a top 100 album, but their list is nowhere to be found. I think you can only find the top 10 of the list. So anyway, side complaint. So they did their top 100 list.
Top 100 albums of all time.
Top 100 albums of all time. I started looking through it and immediately had thoughts. And by the time Friday rolled around, you and I both had a lot of thoughts. So we're going to go through this list. We're going to listen to every album on the list, whether we like the band or not, whether we like the music or not. Luckily, there's I think maybe 4 or 5 albums that I know of. So listening to them was not a big deal. But I still listened to them again. One just to see if they still deserve to be or should be on the album.
Yeah, it gives a nice fresh perspective.
Right.
In the context.
I'm on the list, not on the album.
Yeah,
but
on the list gives you a nice fresh perspective on the list of. And to where we're going to talk about it, where it's like, okay, should this one be on there? And we're obviously in the hundreds and 90s area right now, so a lot of those are about you're thinking about albums after you've gone through the entire list and you're like, this didn't make it, and this didn't make it, and this didn't make it, and then you're like, but this made it, and this made it. So right now, these are kind of some of those albums. So we're going to get there, and we're going to be like, yeah, this shouldn't be on the list. You know, as you get down the list, it'll be, okay, maybe this deserves to be on the list, but maybe not this high, or maybe this should be higher, or something like that.
Correct.
But right now, it's a lot of animosity towards some of these
Yes.
some of these albums that have made the list, and
So this could take, I would say, at the least, it's probably going to take the next 6 episodes. This will take up. It might take up 10, but I imagine probably about 6 to 10 episodes, depending again how many albums I can get through each week. Because I just listen to less music than Colton does. I don't drive around. Colton
has a 45-minute commute.
I have podcasts that I don't have to listen, but they're part of my work. There's a lot of sports podcasts I listen to that help me keep informed on what's going on in the sports world, which helps me sell sports pictures. And then I don't know, Colton, what your evening is with your wife, but I know my wife and I are getting ready to go on a June 1st. We're going to go on a visual, no TV fast for about a month. So it's going to be music and books. If we want to be on our laptops and read things and stuff, we'll probably do some work at night. But we're going to disengage from the TV for about a month and unplug.
That's cool.
It'll give me an opportunity to finally plow through some books that I need to read for the podcast. I also just finally watched Oppenheimer last night, or yesterday afternoon. Nick and I watched it while we were doing some work. Movie was fantastic. I know some people didn't like it. I thought the movie's fantastic. From everything I've heard, though, the book that it's based on, Prometheus, is even better. So I really want to read that. I know I don't have a scientific bone in my body. I literally cheated my way through science classes in high school and avoided them like the plague if I could in college. But I respect the hell out of it. I read a lot about science.
Right.
So,
huh? You're an armchair scientist.
Yeah, I'm an armchair scientist. I think it's absolutely fundamental. So I have an interest in what science is, what it should be, what it's doing, how it's being misused in culture and the country and stuff like that. So, and the movie was every bit fascinating on the scientific level. So, all the famous scientists that I am aware of and how they're interacting with this building of the atomic bomb and stuff like that. So,
yeah, and I think
actually Oppenheimer wasn't a Christian. I don't think he was religious at all. I think the moral dilemma that he was going through while building the bomb, and then really had a crisis of faith, so to speak, after creating the bomb and realizing what he unleashed, I think would be probably a good discussion on this podcast, and our eternal pacifism, flirtations with pacifism on the show, or nonviolence. So anyway.
Also, I think it's totally, going back to your science thing, I think that it's totally fair for anybody out there to sit there and say you are fascinated by new discoveries and how the world works and stuff. But you may not necessarily want to get down to that mathematical level of how to figure all of that shit.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Exactly.
I think that's okay to say. I think it's really cool. I'm very similar where I'm like, yeah, I love learning about all that kind of stuff about the new discoveries. I love space type stuff, and I'm not even like a geeky, like Star Wars isn't my thing. I like The Martian. That's more kind of like the space stuff that I like. And so it's nerdy. That's why I love The Martian, the book. It's kind of like this nerdy, and even he has another book. Andy Weir has another book called Project Hail Mary, and they're both kind of this nerdy science book where everything is mathematical. It's all scientific, but he's having to do all the math. I'm not having to do any of it. So, because science is applied math, and that's the truth of it. So
anyway, I got us down a cul-de-sac. That's why if you're listening to this, you probably, I don't know, maybe you hate the show. But anyway, that's what we do. So all that said, hopefully we can get through this list not too long a time. We're gonna do 12 songs tonight. Before we start going through the list, I'm gonna say a few thoughts on top 100 lists, and I'm also going. But first, I'm gonna. I went on the internet and I created a spreadsheet for Colton and I, because we have some opinions for sure on this list. But I had remembered that Rolling Stone was probably about 15, 20 years ago, had put together a top 500 list, which is just asinine. I don't know how in the world. I mean, it's hard enough to do 100 lists, but after 100, I mean, it's really relative. But look, Rolling Stone is the preeminent music magazine, so good for them to do it. And I think I have somewhere, it's probably underneath my bed, with magazines I've saved. I think I have a copy of that. So I went in and found their list. I was glad I did, because it had been updated in 2020. I think 2 years ago, I think is when they said it'd been updated in the last couple of years. I think it was 2023. The list is different from what I remember. When the list first came out, like, I'm pretty sure Abbey Road was number 2, Pet Sounds was number 3, I believe. Dark Side of the Moon, or Pet Sounds was 2, Abbey Road was Dark Side of the Moon was 3. Those songs are not in, like, I think Pink Floyd's
like 30
now.
or 40 now or something.
Yeah,
Like
Pink
47.
Floyd's way down the list. Abbey Road's, I think, like the 20s. So none of this is old guy complaining. It's just saying the list has been updated. And it's been, it reflects some of what's in the Apple list and some that is not in the Apple list. And so we'll point out when they cross over and when they don't. Just kind of give some reference to other people who should know something about music, which is point number 2. I do have a problem with this list. I think the people putting together this list either don't have enough breadth and depth of musical tastes, either individually or as a group, or there are agendas that are being inserted into putting the list together, which is making the list go way off track sometimes. So,
For example, like, to kind of reinforce what Tim says, it seems like we need a representative for this group, and so therefore we put in an album that we feel like represents that particular group or whatever.
yes.
So that's an example of an agenda that's trying to be pushed out there. You can see that there is a large amount of African American female influence in this list, where it may be extremely important to they may feel validated through this list of feeling represented and that kind of stuff. But is that, and Tim and I are definitely biased. I'm going to say it several times on some of my notes where some of these bands, I'm like, yeah, I'm biased towards them. And I'm not saying that unbiased towards the African American females or whatever. I'm just saying that this is an example. If you go and you look at this list, you may sit there and you're like, okay, again, this is what we do when we are trying to evaluate something. We try to look at the perspective. Especially like in English class, right? We are trying to look at it through the lens of those that have created what they created. And so I am trying to insert myself into this position. And a lot of us do this subconsciously all the time. And so how did these top 100 albums get picked? And so you can start to see trends and start to see theories. This is why, again, these are all styles in which you can read literature. If you take on that perspective, you can read those types of things into it. And so, yeah, there are things that you can definitely see. You can see trends throughout. And that may be you. You may look at this list and you're like, geez, I don't see this making it. Or I don't understand why that's there. And we're going to be talking about that as we go through this list.
Yeah.
That's going to be a reality. And there's plenty of people on all sides of all genres where we're like, that shouldn't be here, or maybe it shouldn't be that high, or whatever. And so, yeah, so I think the best thing to do is just a list. All I say is that if...
Well,
Well, yeah.
Are you gonna start with the list?
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I say listen to what we have to say and don't take... I'm afraid that just like somebody would think that we're just gonna obliterate some artist or whatever. Again,
I might obliterate one or two, but I'm glad you said that because I'm gonna feel bad about it because they've been put in a list and I don't think they should be, and that's not their fault.
No, absolutely.
So they're kind of taking flack when they shouldn't be. Look,
and listen to what we say. Don't.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to be very honest on every single one. Look, and I have a problem with Apple's list. I have a problem with Apple's list not because I think I know better. If someone was to ask me to put together a music list, I would say I can put together a top 100 list through 2000, and that's maybe even stretching it. But after 2000, I don't know shit about new music. Like, I might know hits, but in terms of albums and even like artists, I know nothing. I don't know anything about R&B. I don't know anything about rap. I don't know anything really about pop. Even like pop rock. My musical taste stopped around 2000. So understand that I'm aware of a lot of these artists, they're being put on a list that I wouldn't put on there. I'm aware of that, and I'm going to be honest about it. And that's what's reflected in both the Apple list and the updated Rolling Stone list. However, Apple is arguably the most important, along with Spotify, are the two most important music vehicles in the world.
Yeah.
They needed to have taken this list, I think, more seriously than they did.
And
they shouldn't have inserted they either should have had people with more musical tastes, older people, however you want it to be, so that there's more, I think. So some things were not put on the list, and some things that should have been included on the list weren't.
And so here's also something that we want to iron out before we get this started. Because this is also where I feel like there was a flaw in Apple's list. And this was something that I had to address within myself when I took my history of rock and roll class. Yes, that class exists out there, but I did take a history of rock and roll class in college. And in history of rock and roll class, we covered everything from, we started with African drums, and then we moved from there to the African American spirituals, and then we went to the blues, and then from there we talked about how the blues then evolved into rock and roll. We watched rock and roll evolve. We got to the split off for funk, the split off for country. We got to the split off for rap music, and all the different splits. And so it was kind of a really cool thing that we got to experience through that. So I do have a bit of knowledge on what greatness looks like, but as our final assignment, we had to pick the 5 greatest rock songs of all time, and defend them as in a paper. And initially, I'm like, oh, this is the greatest rock song, this is the greatest rock song. But really, it is actually about what is the impact that those songs had. It wasn't necessarily about just picking just songs that I like. Right? It's about picking a song that then affected other artists moving forward, or the way that sound came across then encouraged other people to do different things from it. And that's what makes them, and that particular piece, it was original, and it was something that nobody else had been doing, or they did it the best and nobody's been able to replicate it since. And this is this, and it becomes this iconic thing. That's what makes something great in the eyes of when it comes to music and what we're talking about with greatness. And so we're going to look at each of the albums, right? It's not about the artist. And this is where I was a little frustrated, is because it seems like for some of these albums, it's, well, this is a great artist that's done really great things, that is very unique, but then we don't. But yet their album really is actually okay. Maybe they had a song or two that was really good on there, but it's not a complete album
Right.
that has this complete story. And so that's what we're trying to evaluate. Is we're looking at the greatness, the impact of those albums. Again, is it unique? Is it original? Is it, and all of these things can be at their own different levels of whatever. Is it, what did it impact stuff? Like number 2 on the list is Thriller by Michael Jackson. Okay. There's some things that he was unique in, but really it was about how this pop album is iconic for the rest of the world, where again, it became something where it had a global impact, where everybody had this album, you know, kind of thing. And so, those are the things that we're going to be talking about as we go through. We're going to start with 100 and we're going to move all the way down to 1. So yeah. Anything else before we get started on the music?
I'll just say it now. We will note which album it is. We're going to go through, like I said, 12 albums tonight. Only one of these 12 is also on Rolling Stone's list. So there, like Colton said, this is the part of the list where everything kind of gets dicey. It's arguably a little more subjective, and you're trying to round out your list. We're running out of consensus top albums. Right. So, but there's only one, and so let's go into it.
Okay, so our first album is number 100, Body Talk by Robyn. How'd you feel about it, Tim?
One, I was stunned that Robyn's still doing music, because I have her debut album, Robyn Is Here. It's somewhere in the garage, probably in my 2 or 3 boxes of CDs. I really liked it. She was a nice little spunky Swedish Christina Aguilera. So it was that kind of music. It was like early Christina Aguilera. Who else was? It was all in that Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, all that. But she had some Britney Spears, but hers was I really liked the album. I had no idea she was still doing music. When I found out it was her, I was.
Well, and this is her 9th.
This is her 9th album.
Studio album, and it
most
came out
of
in 2009.
Yeah, and she's been producing music, but I think it's more European. She's been not doing much over here, but this album caught. Look, here are my thoughts. I enjoyed the album. It was good electronic music. I had a little hard time. I was fighting myself a little bit because I was telling myself, look, this is enjoyable, but I'm trying to do work, and this is electronic music. I just was like, this is not the venue I'm supposed to be listening. I'm supposed to be at a bar, at a club, where people are dancing. But for what it is, it's a fantastic album. It's too long. There's too many songs on it. But for what it is, it's fantastic. I can see why a lot of people like it. I can see why somebody thought it was on this list. It should not be on this list. And I will also say, well, I don't think club music, not electronic music. Well, no, I'm going to take. When I first listened to this, I said, I don't think electronic music should be on this list. But you and I had a conversation before we started recording. I'm going to take that back. This album should not be on the list. It's a nice little album. I'm not going to listen to it again. But if I'm at a club, I'll probably listen to something like, oh, it's Robyn. Good for Robyn.
So I said, I have very similar thoughts to Tim. I said, ultimately it comes down to, this is just an album not for me. It's lots of poppy tech. None of the songs are serious standouts for me. I wouldn't be able to discern any of the songs for you.
It's like background noise.
I can't even discern her as a musician. So you were talking about Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, that whole thing, and I was like, if you put a gun to my head and asked me to guess who the artist was based off of any of her songs, I'd guess Britney Spears every single time, because I'm just like, this just sounds like Britney Spears to me. And apparently, so as far as greatness goes, because I did a little bit of research, every single one of these albums I did a bit of research to kind of see. I wanted to know, again, that kind of greatness aspect of it. Okay, so Robyn 1 is one of those artists that people say is, if you are a pop writer, most people will say that Robyn was definitely an influence on what it is that they were writing in today's age. Pop writers now. And which, after listening to Robyn, and we're going to get to Lady Gaga later, I can definitely see how that might have been an influence for Lady Gaga and her album later. So apparently this inspired sad club music.
Why is that a thing?
I don't know, but it was like, where you can be out on the dance floor and dancing, but the lyrics are still about something sad.
When the Molly kicks in, you want to feel the vibe.
And I mean, we're going to talk about another artist who sings about something that's sad and it's still poppy, and that's going to be kind of interesting too. But and so that's why it was possibly included on this list. I did say I didn't think that the album. I did think there was too many songs. They all sound the same. No offense. It is kind of that same thing where I'm trying to be. Every one of these is you could play this album at a club and nobody probably would be upset about it because they'd all be like, oh, okay, this is it all has the same beat the entire time. There's no change, there's no nothing. But I did say that the songs are all tight. They're all like 2 minutes 45 seconds. They're all concise. They're not overlong, but I have no connections to this type of music and I agree with Tim. I don't think that this was a top 100 album. When you think about albums that could have been here instead, you're just like, okay, this one could be one of those that go. So that was Body Talk by Robyn. We good on Body Talk?
Yeah.
Next, album 99, Hotel California by the Eagles. Not on Rolling Stone's top 100. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Look, it's a good album. It's a very good album. It's got an iconic album cover. It's got an iconic lead track, which is the title track of the album. Life in the Fast Lane, Wasted Time, Last Resort are really good. I don't think the Eagles produced an album, period, that should be on the top 100 list.
Wow.
I think they have a great catalog of music, and they got a lot of hits, but I wouldn't say any of their albums are like, that's a fantastic album. That said, I don't have a problem with somebody putting it on their list. I would not be on my list. I don't even think it'd be anywhere close. I think this is getting in because of the song, but not actually the quality of the album. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I said I disagree, which is awesome. I love when we disagree on the show. I said I'm biased towards this album because, again, this is all kind of along the avenue of what I grew up with as far as music goes. And the hard part was also, so I've been listening to these in order, again, to get fresh perspective on the list. So we got Body Talk first, and then I go straight from there into Hotel California. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much better.
Breath of fresh air.
And and it's such a step up from Body Talk. Hotel California is an iconic song. New Kid in Town, I think, is an iconic song.
Yeah, that's true.
Life in the Fast Lane, iconic. I think there are sleeper lyrical ballads that, like Wasted Time and Try and Love Again, that are beautiful songs, and they're well written. I think that the album itself is the most complete that the Eagles had came out with, and remember, this is after they replaced their guitarist. So
this is by far their best album.
And what's crazy,
Desperado, I think, is maybe close, but not. But even then, you look at Desperado, like, it's got Desperado on it, but the other songs on there don't like make up their big...
Right, and so that's where I'm like, and then, okay, so the Eagles, up until this point, so they dominated the 70s, and then up until 1975, they had already put out a greatest hits album. And this album came out in 1976.
Yeah.
And so again, this is kind of one of those where it's like, okay, we have to give credit to the Eagles, so which one do we choose that's the best of their albums? And so it does seem like this is kind of one of those where it's like, well, it's got to be this one, because this one has the best options out of all of them. Because we can't discredit what the Eagles did for rock and roll and what they did for music in general. Because I do think that they are one of those bands that do have that. And so I believe that it greatly. And again, new guitarists. I love. You can't argue. Or if you sit there and say you hate the Eagles, you can't hate their vocals because they're phenomenal every time. But I do think it has greatly impacted rock music, and I said that it deserved its spot on the top 100 albums of all time. But I did say that I am biased, though. So that was my argument for it. So.
Well, look, they had a. This wasn't one of the reasons why I don't think this was on the Rolling Stones original list. The Eagles have had, to their credit, the Geezers have had a revival that have reintroduced themselves to a lot of younger people with their live concerts that they've recorded and stuff like that. And so I can see if this is clearly a list put together by younger folks. This is probably maybe, again, if they're trying to do genres of music, it's like, well, we can't do Jackson Browne or blah, blah, so we're going to put these guys in. That's their best album. Again, if I was in the editorial room and we're fighting over curating this list, I wouldn't be pounding on my table. I mean, it is a very good album. I just don't think it's top 100. But with what we're going to go through in the next 5-10 minutes, it definitely needs to be on the fucking list.
Might as well be there.
Yeah.
Do we need another beer before we go into the next one?
No, I don't think. No, we probably shouldn't. No, we should probably get through the next one before I drink any more beer.
All right, our next one, album 98, is ASTROWORLD by Travis Scott.
Brother, you cannot do an entire album.
Wait, how many songs is it? 17?
17 songs, all with fucking auto-tune. A little auto-tune goes a long way. That album, when I was listening to that, I was imagining Peter Frampton doing an entire album with the talk box. And if you don't know what the talk box is, look up Peter Frampton talk box, and then you'll immediately know what it is. Or Motley Crue from Kickstart My Heart.
Oh, yeah.
Good Lord. I did not like that album at all. I don't know why it was anywhere close. It wouldn't even been on my top 500. There was nothing original about that album. The auto-tune, yeah, did bug the shit out of me. It was awful. Sorry, Travis. I didn't like that one. It wasn't even like, I'm an old guy and I'm missing something. I was like, no, this sucks. This is just shit.
Yeah, so first off, Tim is not as into hip-hop as other people are. Hopefully, if you've listened to my taste on this podcast, you know that I am a hip hop guy. So I do want to say, first off, I would like to note that I am fully aware of Travis Scott's impact on hip hop since this album came out. Okay, I'm fully well aware of that. So for anybody that sits there and wants to talk back at me, Travis Scott helped define what was hip hop for 2018 onward. Okay. So when this album came out in 2018,
without the auto-tune, I hope.
No, rap went this way.
No!
For the past 4 or 5 years, it's been this way. In this album, he has features from Drake, 21 Savage, and The Weeknd, all men who helped shape hip-hop during those years.
I like the one with The Weeknd.
So from there, I would like to say that, in my opinion, 10 years from now, this album does not make the list. It may be the distance I personally put between, again, the auto-tune, between the trap beats. I hate trap beats. And kind of that auto-tune vocals, like where you're singing, and it's not great in hip-hop, but it's hard to look at an album like Hotel California and then listen to this and you're just like, I believe in 10 years you can sit there. I mean, what, Hotel California is 55 years old? No, almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
And we're talking about it and that kind of stuff. We're talking about it today. I don't know if anybody 10 years from now is still talking about ASTROWORLD.
Yeah, this is the first album that I think reveals there's whatever is going on with this list. Recency bias is certainly one of the problems.
Yeah, and I definitively said in my notes that just because you are popular doesn't mean that you made an all-time album.
No.
And that's kind of, and even if you like impacted hip hop for these last 5 years,
Alvin and the Chipmunks sold a shit ton of singles, so album sales shouldn't matter.
I was like, I don't even think there's 40 hip hop albums on this list, and I don't think true hip hop enthusiasts would put this in their top 40 hip hop albums of all time. So I don't even know if they put it in their top 100 hip hop albums of all time. So I don't know where this came from as far as, again, kind of what you were talking about, where it's this recency bias, where it's just yep, here for it.
Just real quick, just to show, I'm not the person to be talking about music after 2000, really. I said I don't listen to pop, rap, R&B. I didn't even use the word hip hop. We don't even use the term rap anymore, do we? It's hip hop.
Yeah, hip hop is a kind of an all-encompassing terminology. So there's different aspects of hip hop, and so oftentimes when we talk about this kind of stuff, we'll usually say the terminology would usually be hip hop because again, you what you may think of as rap. Hopefully, if you're listening to Travis Scott, you're not. If you sat there and you listened to like, I don't know, if you grew up like in the 90s and you're like listening to NWA or you even listened to Run DMC if you were listening to the 80s stuff or whatever, you're not sitting there and looking at Travis Scott and you're like, yeah, I guess that's rap.
Right.
No.
I haven't. Well, and I have an interesting point to make on when we get to USHER. So
hip hop is a lot more encompassing than. It's kind of like an over genre kind of thing. So because like rock has many different subcommittees, right? So hip hop is just kind of the same kind of thing. So there's a lot of stuff within the realm of hip hop.
Okay.
But do you need a beer?
Yeah, might as well do beer.
Getting old.
Quick programming note while Colton is getting a new beer. If you've been listening to the episode the last couple weeks, you've noticed we've gone back away from breaking them up from music and beer of the week. That's going to be a temporary thing, which might just turn into a permanent thing where we go back to one big episode. So my schedule's picking up. It's a little harder to break them down into 3 episodes. And we don't seem like we're getting any more people listening to the main episode than we were before. So if that just, again, programming note to explain why we've gone back to the mega episode. So beer number 2 is it Just Society? It's just, clearly
Society.
Just Society. Oh, so, wow. Tim's beer pouring ski.
We're drinking Bulbous Flowers. I grabbed this one because that way we could taste side-by-side hazies. So we had, although that one was a double IPA hazy, this one is
that one was lush. This one's dank.
this is a 7%, well, it does say Bulbous Flowers, and it's a hazy percent, 7% by volume.
Oh, that's bitter.
It's a full bloom of hops with an unfiltered aura. It's a year-round daydream of freshly squeezed citrus. So there we go. How do we feel about it?
I like it. It is bitter, though.
Getting wow, that's not usually terms that we use to describe hazies.
No, but it is. I'm right, though, right? It's
Yeah, it's definitely not as sweet as the last one, which the last one
Yeah,
wasn't
maybe that's
overly
what it
sweet
is.
or anything, but
definitely dank, which no problem here. Okay. I'm interested. Colton and I already had a conversation about this, but album number 97, Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album, Rage Against the Machine, which is their debut. Your thoughts?
So one, I think the easiest thing to say about this album, just talking about the album to start off with, is it's a bomb track, which is their first song on the album.
Yeah,
I think is loaded. I'm extremely biased when it comes to Rage Against the Machine. But even with being biased, I was still extremely surprised to see it on this top 100 list. I'm a huge fan of it. I believe that they were impactful as part of the angst that kind of took over the early 90s, and they have such great songs on this album: Killing in the Name, Take the Power Back, Know Your Enemy, Freedom. I love this album. I think it's terrific. I'm happy to see Rage get some recognition, even if one of the only reasons, and this is the only reason that I could see that they would possibly put it on there, is just Tom Morello's iconic guitar style. I don't think that this should be on a top 100 list. Maybe on a top 500 at some point, but not on a top 100. I could get its political significance, but I don't think Rage was so culturally. Yeah, it's just not culturally relevant enough.
Yeah, no. It was interesting. It was good to go through this list and then kind of check my. It works.
I just can't read my notes.
Hit the remote.
Oh.
And then if that doesn't work, then hit the switch again. No, the other one. There we go.
Sorry.
My first reaction was, no, that's not the album. If you're going to do Rage, that's not the album I would do. I'd do Evil Empire. I looked up Evil Empire. No, this is the one to do. I really like Evil Empire, but this had probably more impactful songs. I went back and forth on this. Because, again, I think these lists I think your top 100 list should be reflective of genuinely great music, but I think it also should be educational to people who are maybe a little too stuck in a certain kind of music, or they're music fans, but they're just like, oh, I've never actually listened to this, and like my dad talked about, which would have been, I'm old enough that this would have been like my kid, like my youngest would be like, my dad talks about Rage Against the Machine. If you're going to do Rage Against the Machine, this is the album to do. I agree with you. I can see someone talking themselves into it, particularly coming off the BLM movement, but this was a 13 to 22-year-old male dominated album and group. I'm someone who's been to 5 Rage Against the Machine concerts in my life. It's just males there who are angry about this, that, and the other. I will say, having said that, what was interesting about, yes, white people and Hispanics listen to hip hop, rap. Rage really crossed that over where you had all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Like, well, I was still coaching football when this album came out, and the kids who were really into it were the Hispanic kids. Yeah. They were just like really resonated with them. So I can see why it's on this list. I think it's like, but not as harsh as the previous album we're talking about. I think long term, this album's not there. It's a honorable mention.
Yeah. Good old Rage.
I'm then going to contradict myself. That said, and maybe this is why they're not on the list. They had a style all into themselves. We had a 60-year-old. We got a couple of older guys, 10, 15 years older than us, at our in our beer group, and they asked, they didn't really know anything about Rage Against the Machine, wanted us to describe them, and it's rapping with heavy metal. And
angry rapping.
Angry rapping with heavy metal. And
I still say that they're fairly similar in styles to the Beastie Boys if they were just a little bit angrier and had a political agenda. Where it's that rap rock kind of crossover.
That's true. That's true.
Where if you wanted to find, that's just the best where I could say, if you wanted to know kind of what it was without, like, it's just, I would say, if you had heard Beastie Boys, like, Sabotage or, No Sleep Till Brooklyn or whatever, like, it's kind of that whole thing where, they're yelling in the mic,
yes,
like, the whole time, and there's kind of this rock metal, but still heavy bass, heavy, like there's a rhythm to the guitar, and all guitar has rhythm, but there's a very like repetitive kind of where during each of the segments where it's playing this kind of rhythm for somebody to rap along to as opposed for somebody to sing along to. So
okay, so my final verdict is they shouldn't be on the list. I will say Tom Morello should be on a top, I don't know.
Yeah. Top
what that guy, top guitarists are one of the criteria for a top guitarist is they create their own sound. And what Tom Morello was able to put out of a guitar was, I think, pretty much up there with Eddie Van Halen, where people no one ever like thought that was possible. Like I heard I think there was 2 albums out by the time I finally saw them live, and one of the things I remember going to the concert wanting to see was how much of this is Tom Morello, and then like 10 seconds in, like, oh, apparently it's all 100% Tom Morello just doing it out of the guitar. There's no like crazy thing they're not doing.
He plays the guitar for a lot of his stuff, like that unique sound. He plays it like a guy plays the steel keys in a freaking country band. Is like,
well, he's mixing. He's taking. Yeah, he's taking bluegrass out of a banjo and melding it with scratching on a record.
Yes, yeah.
And it's crazy just what he did. I mean, it's so unique. I don't think anyone's tried to repeat it because it's like, well, you're just a Tom Morello knockoff. So, and it really only works for that music too. To your point, where it hits that rap staccato and that kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway,
album 96, a nice little gem in here.
Yeah.
We have Pure Heroine by Lorde.
So I'm going to wrap myself out. I know Lorde. I'm quite aware of her. This is the first time I actually ever listened to this album. I just knew her from the radio or just stuff popping up on my Spotify, Apple playlist. And just so I've known of her. I've enjoyed her. This is the first time I actually listened to the album. It's a really good album. It's a really good album. I wouldn't put it on my top 100. I would say if you're going to have recency bias, here's my problem with
it's not the worst thing ever to pick Lorde.
If you're putting her on, I can see why, because it's led to Halsey and this other music that's popped up since then. Yeah. Which has taken over pop music. Yeah. And so I can 100% see why she's on there.
Yeah. And
that album, and that album, again, it's a good, complete album. There wasn't anything on there where I was like, oh, this song sucks. I mean, there were some that were better than others, but I thought it was a nice, tight album where the songs were pretty good. There was enough variety, and I just didn't feel like, okay, you threw 2 fillers on there because you didn't have enough content. Or to throw too much on there, which will be a criticism for some other albums.
So when this album comes out in 2013, it's almost kind of a fairly similar kind of response. So when we look at grunge music, And you may not like that I'm equating it to this, but again, pop music pop has always been fluff for long periods of time, but in 2010s, 2011, 12, 2009, 2008, people like Lady Gaga were popular. Maroon 5, another popular pop artist during that time. They use lots of tech to influence their singing and kind of what's going. And I use both of those as examples because both Lady Gaga and Adam Levine both have incredible voices. And so there's nothing, but they use the auto-tune and they sing about all these different things that Lady Gaga, not so much. She does a lot of her stuff is very personal. And I think Maroon 5, when they first started, was very personal, but then it kind of got to more of that. Let's do what's going to make us money. And lots of people were doing that. And so there was a lot of tech. The late 2000s was almost kind of like the late 2000s was a lot of, it was almost like the 80s had come back.
Yeah.
So a lot of those synths kind of stuff was coming through. And then in 2013, Lorde decided to come out with this stripped down album where the beats and the tracks are really stripped down. The lyrics are an edgy kind of resistance to the pop scene. But she recognizes that she's a pop icon. And that she can be this, but speaks about what she actually knows and experiences in songs like Royals, White Teeth Kids?
Yeah.
And so it became this kind of countercultural piece. She was off-putting to some people because she's just kind of this weird soul that just kind of came out of New Zealand. But she speaks about what she actually knows and has experienced. She also sings it so well. She's got amazing vocals. Not every song on this album is a hit in my eyes. But there are hidden gems like Ribs. I had never heard Ribs on the radio before, but I'd say that can be argued as the best song on the album. I love that song. I thought it was fantastic. I think that she picked, and here's also where we talked about that iconicness of her and kind of what she influences, that from this album, she paved the way for what eventually is Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo, and you talked about Halsey. And she's the one who did it first in this century, or in this decade. And with the album being fantastic at only 37 minutes of length, which also that was a huge plus, was I don't think she overdid it. I think she kept her songs tight. I think she kept the album tight. It's not a problem for me on this list. It wasn't like something where I was like, yeah, this has got to go.
Now, if you're going to do an updated list, that one needs to be on there. I do have one complaint. It's not specifically about this album. She is part of this movement in pop rock music that I am so tired of, and we need to end it. It's this lazy mouth. It's a combination of lazy mouth, not pronouncing things. Everything's a soft pronunciation, particularly our R's. It sounds like everybody in pop music's got a speech impediment.
Well, she was from New Zealand, so we can let it.
Nope. It is not as no, because there are certain words where she does the hard R, and then it's
like Royals.
Yeah. Look, Adele does this. Billie Eilish does this. Lauren Daigle in Christian music does this. Sam Mendes does this. Sam Harris does it. Halsey does it. It's a whole generation of pop singers where they got mush mouth, and they pronounce words strangely. Like love is loive and touch is toich. We're adding oys to everything, and I'm sick and tired of it. I used to think Adele started it, But I am now convinced Amy Winehouse started it because she did it as well. And Adele, she predates Adele by like 8 years or
How could
something.
you say that about one of Apple Music's top 10 album makers of all time?
Well, I don't know about top 10, but she is also, that album is also on Rolling Stone's list. Look, I love Amy Winehouse. We'll get to that album at some point.
It'll be the last episode because she's that high up.
It just proves how human nature is mimetic and how we just
I mean, it's whatever.
we just copy people. I think it's kids falling in love. I don't think it's as cynical as that. I think it's people falling in love with a certain artist and subconsciously or consciously trying to mimic that. I think Whitney Houston totally transformed female music with that loud, just powerful voice.
Yeah.
And that didn't exist before. And then Mariah Carey came in with steroids, and everybody after that has been trying to chase it. And unfortunately, most of them have wrecked their voices prematurely and had to take a step, including Adele.
Oh yeah.
Because very few people have pipes like that, but this very huge, broad, commanding voice. As soon as Whitney Houston comes on, that's the thing girls are now wanting to mimic. So again, it is very mimetic, but I'm over it. Enough of the whatever it's apparently I looked it up. It's a thing. It's called indie. What is it? Indie girl dialect it's now has an official dialect. It's indie girl dialect.
I'd
So
love to say that to Shawn Mendes' face. Is that what he said? I was like,
He
hey,
was
did you
one
know
of
that
them.
You have indie girl dialect?
he was one of them. They had a thing where he said "toich" instead of "touch," and so they actually had the article. I was someone had written
I think it's pronounced touche.
no,
No, I know.
someone had done an academic piece on it. And they'd included sound clips to illustrate what was going on. I was so happy it was on the internet. Okay, I'm not the only one. I'm just not some crazy
Vindicated, validated.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. This next one, I'm no good. I'm useless on this one. I have thoughts, but I'm useless.
Oh, so Colton's got to go first.
Mm.
Oh, you want to?
No,
go
I'll go first.
All
You
right,
have to go
album
first.
95, Confessions by Usher.
Okay, 20 fucking songs? No, brother, come on. There's 20 songs on this album. It's ridiculous.
You didn't like? I said you didn't like any of them.
Oh no! I mean, note number 2 was there are notable, even for a guy like me who says he doesn't know anything about music after 2000. There's a lot of notable songs on this album. So, look, I enjoyed the album. It would not be in my regular rotation. If I was trapped in a car with Colton on the way to a NASCAR race, I would definitely listen to it.
It would get awkward at points if we had to listen.
It would not be on my 100 list at all. It's not a top 100. There's nothing about it other than it having some notable hits. There's nothing about it that's a top 100 album.
All right. For me, our tastes are a little bit different. So as an R&B album, I think that this album is phenomenal. When we talk about overall greatness and impact on pop culture, now obviously I'm going to balloon this up a little bit more as kind of a little bit of a sarcastic thing, but hopefully that comes across. There is not a wedding or a high school dance that you can get by without playing "Yeah" by Usher, which is the first real track.
It's the first track.
And that's 20 years after this album was released. This album was released in 2004. And so on top of that massive dance floor hit, which again, I don't think that just because you have this one hit, that makes it, this huge thing. This is actually Usher's 4th studio album. And this is when Usher became, I think for a lot of people, this is what put him on the map. I had read reviews on this kind of album and where it was 2004 did not, when people reflect on the year 2004, if you were into the popular music at the time, everybody was listening to Confessions by Usher. it's a classic R&B album that is now up there as like one of the top R&B albums of all time. It's raw, and it is, as the title says, it's confessional. Usher lets everybody in on his personal life. It's conflictive. It's apologetic, which is crazy for an R&B album. And it's best wrapped up and best surmised in the album's confessional trilogy songs, which is Confessions, Confessions 2, and then ultimately with Burn. And those are fairly early on. So I think those are tracks 4, 5, and 6. And this is an album that has defined R&B and defined R&B in the 21st century. And still, I believe it still carries its weight today. If people would listen to it and they'd be like, yeah, this is a staple R&B album for what's happening. So I love it. If R&B albums have to get a shot to be on this list, and though it's not necessarily, it's not Let's Get It On, or what? No, it's what's Marvin Gaye's album called? It's not Let's Get It On. It's What's Going On?
What's going on?
What's going on? It's
what's going on? What's going on?
It's still kind of one of those things where even if it's not that far up the list, it's still something that if it has to be at album 95, I'm totally okay with it being album 95. It's great. I love to listen to it. I wouldn't listen to it with Tim in the car. If it was just me and Tim, I'd be like, I don't know where this car ride's going.
Look, this is an album. I'm not. My opinion doesn't matter. I know like 2 or 3 songs from this album, and I know Usher was in the movie She's All That, and that's about all I know about Usher. So, and that was like 1999 or something.
But you listened to it and you said like, all right, it was enjoyable enough. You're like,
oh hell yeah.
Oh okay. No, that's good enough. You know, as long as
okay.
Here's
my. I forgot to put this in my notes. Here was the funny thing going through my mind about halfway through this album. That album is classified as R&B, right?
Yeah.
There is nothing that much different between that and any LL Cool J album, which in the 90s was considered rap.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, I think that says more about LL Cool J as a rapper, or
yeah,
what rapper was and rap was from like 96 to 2000 before it totally got changed by NWA. But I was like, yeah, this just sounds like a lot of this sounds like LL Cool J tracks, which
that's fair.
Isn't a complaint. It's not a diss.
Oh, on to my favorite album so far. Album 94, ladies and gentlemen. Untrue by Burial. I want to go first on this one. So, I told Tim on Friday how I was going to depict this album, and I'm going to stick to my guns on this. Because Tim's going to explain it a little bit better after this.
Oh, I have.
Because I'm not going to go into details. I'm not going to tell you how this is impactful. Well, I mean, kind of. And here we go. I equate this album, Untrue by Burial, to looking at a Jackson Pollock painting. There are people out there that are going to say I am ignorant of his artistic style and expression, and that this is real art. And that according to the synopsis on Apple Music, it captures the raw essence of what silence and isolation sound like in electronic music. But all I can think when I listen to it is, holy fuck, somebody actually got paid for this shit? So there you go. That's my review of Untrue by Burial. What are your thoughts, Tim?
You were too kind. You were too kind in your initial. I I'm going to give you my snide comment, and then I'll give you my...
I texted Tim, by the way.
It's still not going to be kind, but
On Friday,
I'll give you my more...
After listening to this album, and I said, golly, this album's fucking awful. There you go. All right, go, Tim.
We were about 3 songs in, and I thought, this is the kind of album Spinal Tap would do if they did an electronic album. If you don't know who Spinal Tap is or seen the movie...
No, you don't have to see
this.
the movie.
This will go right over your head. But if you've
Smell Black Love.
if you've seen the movie, there's the great scene where they've reached rock bottom. They're playing at the amphitheater at Six Flags Magic Mountain. They've lost their guitar player, and the lead singer bassist says, or not bassist, it says, "You're welcome to Spinal Tap Mark II." A free fall jazz ensemble, and that's what I thought this was. This was Spinal Tap Mark VI, a freeform electronica ensemble.
Oh man.
Okay, seriously. No, look. There's no way. I hated this album. I didn't think. It wasn't even good at what it was supposed to do. Like, if you like it, fine. I took a couple. Sorry, Burial. I think part of the name also just put me off. Like, I told Colton, I'm skipping that. It just had like weird vibes to it. But
but I told him, I said, you have to listen.
I know.
You have to listen to like at least 3 songs.
I listened to like 80-90% of it. This is... I took couple new music appreciation classes at UCLA when I was an undergrad, and so when we got to the modern part, one of the classes I had, this professor just, he's filling us with Mozart and Stradivarius and Beethoven and Bach and yada yada yada, and then this.
Oh, did he show you this contemporary shit?
He's playing this contemporary avant-garde classical music and just doing everything he can to tell a bunch of 18, 19-year-olds that he's not shitting down your leg. No. It's raining, and this is really good music. And it's just like, no, this is terrible. Where did the good... Like, I'm not even... like. Full disclosure, I do love classical music. I mean, I listen to it about that. So I appreciated classical music before I take it. But there are a lot of people in that class like, I had never heard classical music before. That's classical music. I don't know. This is just self-indulgent noise. And that's what this thing is. It's just a guy with one of those sound pads.
Yeah.
And GarageBand just kind of like coming up with stuff, and a lot of people apparently liked it, but there was nothing soothing about it. Like electronic music, there was nothing soothing about it. There was nothing inspirational like some can be. I mean, before we started this, I said I was watching
that's because
Oppenheimer soundtrack.
You're supposed to
The Oppenheimer soundtrack was Mozart compared to this. With soaring music and even orchestration mixed in with electronic stuff, and like this was just it was work. I don't know what they were smoking when they put this thing in, but this was an abomination.
No, remember it's supposed to be with silence and isolation, sound like an electronic music.
It is what one of the Rings of Hell sounds like for sure.
Yes, Dante inspired this one. All right. On to the
It's not going to get any better with the next one.
On to...
I might get myself in trouble.
On to album 93. Okay, so a little background information on 93. I had listened to this album before Tim did. Tim was like, okay, I'm gonna be listening through, and I was like, okay, I was like, I don't care if you don't listen. I was like, if you listen to 3 songs off of the other albums, you have to listen to this album.
I listened to the whole.
You have to listen to the entire album because we need to talk about this because you're gonna have some thoughts. I have some thoughts.
Can I, before you get going? I was completely unaware of how angry Lil Wayne is about having to wear hand-me-downs until I listened to this fucking album.
Well,
There was a lyric in there by Lil Wayne about how he's listing all the reasons why he's angry, and hand-me-downs was one of them. Having to wear hand-me-downs.
So this is album 93 is A Seat at the Table by Solange.
Solange, you should explain who she is.
She is Beyonce's younger sister.
Her full name is, Solange Knowles
Carter. Or, Solange Knowles. Yeah.
I mean, she might be married, or she might have gotten married and hyphenated herself. But
and so she is, and so this record is on top of her. She sang backup vocals for Destiny's Child, or for Beyonce. That's kind of been her career, was that, and then she came out with this album. Now this album was released. Do you have the release date on this one?
2016.
2016.
Because I have a note about that.
2016 is the release of this album, and it was produced by her mom and her dad, and they are throughout this record. I think it's like 15 songs is the total record length, but there's an interlude after pretty much every song throughout the entirety of the album. So there's somebody's talking, giving background information, all that kind of stuff. Do you want to go into my notes first, or do you want to go into your notes first?
No, I'll get mine out of my system. It's bad Alicia Keys. Okay, I'm gonna have a lot of nasty things to say about this album, and I feel bad because again, I think this is one that should not have been put on anywhere near top 100 list, and
if it wasn't,
I wouldn't have felt any different about the album. But now this lady might sing really well, and I don't want to have anything to do with her because my first experience is this angry piece of shit that I had to listen, that I force-fed myself. So, number one, you type in what is the most boring, unoriginal, self-indulgent album of 2016? It is Solange's A Seat at the Table, according to Chat GPT. Solange, America's number one sleep aid. The album is unoriginal. It is slow as hell for most of it. Eeyore wrote an album, and that is this. It is a slow, droopy, feeling sorry for myself. Literally the music is slow like that. And she keeps talking about all these things that she's upset and angry and why she's got problems with white people. But there's nothing informative or helpful about it. It's not like NWA's it's not like fuck the police. I got that. NWA's first album or Fear of the Black Planet. I'll listen to that. I might be like, I'm a white guy. I live in the suburbs. I got no connection to that. But I hear you, brother. This thing was just like, I'm complaining and I don't know why. Like, she's got in there her dad whining about being asked to sell an album to a dude for $1 million because he thinks he's worth $20 or $30 million. Why is that? Why are you getting angry about that? That's just commerce, dude. Somebody lowballed you, then go out there and prove them wrong. You proved them wrong. Why are you still angry about it? Like, he's in there saying he's still angry about that. Just get over it. It's just... This is the opposite of white people problems. I'm sorry, this is like black people problems. It's like, enough already. And it's not. I'm not saying like, oh, Beyonce made a lot of money and her family made a lot of money and they're rich and so they don't have any problems. That's asinine. You grow up in that situation, you have that mentality even when you make money. I get that. It's just she never gets. I never hear her getting to the point of what she's mad about. On top of lousy music.
Yeah.
And I might just take that whole bit that I just took out.
No, I don't think you should.
I did not... And our friend Eric actually said, "Oh, she's really good." I don't know if he said anything specifically about this. I'm so angry about this album. I probably will listen to something else because this one is the electronic one I expected to be let down by. This one, I had read good things about it. I'm listening like, I'm missing it. And again, I don't know, will you get to the point of why you feel so perturbed and angry and telling me that I don't have a seat at the table? Because that's what it seemed like the point of it was, right? It wasn't that she didn't have a seat at the table. It was, we don't have a seat at her table.
Here's what I say. Because I talked about that. So, again, talking about that idea of the seat at a table, I said that this is an isolating album. I first off want to say that I thought it was a well-done 21st century jazz, contemporary jazz album.
I missed that. And I'm saying that, like, I'm not making fun of you. I'm like, okay, I missed that.
No, I think that, like, if you look at a jazz album from previous years, she kind of does that whole thing, where there's this jazz element to it, and like, again, you listen to some of those old jazz albums where the female singing, and it does kind of feel like it has that similar kind of vibe. It's a little bit poppier than that, but that's what I said I think it's a well done contemporary version of a jazz album. I didn't think that was a problem. I thought it was produced fairly well. I said that it addresses a lot of the feelings African Americans in our country struggle with, feelings of animosity, oppression, and generational hatred. All of those are actively talked about. I said it is an album that declares that African Americans are going to claim their seat at the table and assert who they are. They're going to take their own seat. It's a seat at the table. They're going to take it. They're going to sit there whether people want them there or not. And that's kind of the attitude that they have, or the attitude that's presented in this album. I enjoyed a few songs, like I like Don't Touch My Hair and Where Do We Go? But I do feel most isolated. I think it really all comes down to a head ultimately. And ultimately, I was sadly disappointed at the theme of the album comes through in FUBU, where it openly declares that some things are just for us.
Yes.
That gets repeated over and over again, that, again, for black people, some things are just for us. And me being a white male, I'm being asked symbolically to not participate in the conversation. I feel like there were multiple times where in the album where they shut down the chance for a white person, or especially a white male, to have some sort of response or something to say. And so therefore I'm not being invited to have a conversation. It is, and it seems borderline hostile in some parts, which just makes me want to walk away and just go ahead and give up my seat at the table. Yeah. And that's what I said. Like, it didn't seem like this was a healthy conversation. It seemed like you were angry and that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, if you ever want to talk about it, and actually legitimately talk about it, then you can find me somewhere else. But I don't want to be at the table that you are wanting to have a seat at. And not because I don't agree, listen, we've talked about generational hatred on this podcast. We've talked about a lot of different stuff about oppression and animosity towards lots of different groups and kind of the way that people are feeling all around. I don't understand, and I don't understand how anybody could not sit there and think that this album is not a piece of black nationalism, and could potentially be used as black fascism.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, there's white fascism, there's all that stuff that exists out there, but for this, and for somebody to put this on a top 100 because they're like, this speaks to me, and that's where, again, part of this was like, somebody in this list was like, yes, this needs to be on there, not because of how influential it has been on music or how influential it was to anybody else. It was, this spoke to me, and this is like a top black album, and so therefore it needs to be on this list.
Yeah, this is a BLM record. And look, the one reason Colton said a lot of what I said, but with much less emotion. And I'll admit, I get emotional on this because I'm still a child of Martin Luther King, and I do believe in a colorblind society. This album is very much like, no, we're going to lean all into color and differences and yet somehow get along together. And so I find that as a Martin Luther King fan, that's just anathema to me. And two, and this is where Martin Luther King gets his worldview. It just, to bring this album quickly to the crux of what our whole podcast is about. It was just the most unchristian worldview I could think, and I don't think the Knowles are Christians, so I shouldn't be upset that they're not following this worldview. But I'm just listening to this album, like, what is this doing? But it's just now, all right, we're just going to accept both sides don't like each other, so I'm just going to grab what's mine, and we're going to coexist as people who either at best distrust each other, or at worst just outright hate each other, or at worst, like, I think I'm more proud of my blackness than you're proud of your whiteness, and so somehow we're going to get... It was just... Yeah, I'm sorry. The lyrics just pissed me off the more I was listening to it, and I'm someone who's more musically driven. I'm glad what you said about the jazz thing went over my head, but I was just listening to the lyrics and just like, who is this? What are you trying to sell this to, like 1% of the population? I mean, I don't even think like your average black person's this like nationalistic, like the way this album is. It's very, very niche.
And again, also remember, the album says, or again, that's very specific song, some things are just for us, and it seemed like this album was just for you. And again, that's a very black nationalistic, almost black fascist kind of idea, where I hope that most people believe that. I don't know. I agree with Tim. Culture is something to be shared. I get frustrated because, like, for example, my heritage is Scottish and Irish. I love the fact that people get drunk off their ass on fucking St. Patrick's Day. And, and regardless of whatever. I don't care. I'm not holding this as some sacred thing as being like, you're not fucking Irish, so you can't get fucking drunk like the rest of us.
Right.
You can't have corned beef and cabbage, which I get it's kind of a niche thing. Like, everybody's like, why the fuck would you eat that? But I'm saying, like, there's that thing where it's like,
nobody gets upset about St. Patrick's Day getting culturally appropriated.
Well, I'm just saying, I have no problem with you with sharing.
Yeah.
And also part of it is, St. Patrick's Day is almost on the same level as Cinco de Mayo, where it's more heavily celebrated in the United States than it is in the actual country that it's supposedly affiliated with. But and if you didn't know that about Cinco de Mayo, just so you all know, Cinco de Mayo is hardly celebrated in Mexico, like at all. But it is and so but I don't feel like it's exclusive. I don't feel like there's anything a part of my culture and what I have, and some people, if you were to sit there and say, well, white people have no culture, and I'd be like, whoa, that's not true. They use mayonnaise as hot sauce. I don't know.
That's as silly as saying there's a black culture, which is actually a phrase used multiple times on that album, and every time it did, I rolled my eyes. There's no such thing as black culture.
I think that there is such a thing as each individual culture, but we share it with one another. Like
My
we're
point
like,
is,
"This my culture,
there's not
this
a uniform black culture. Anybody who's a black person who says that, you need to get out and move around different parts of the country. Yes, there is a general white culture maybe, but also within the black culture, there are different. It just, I don't know.
And to talk about what you had said about how you were like, this is like the most unchristian thing is like, yeah. I have to admit that I don't think that that's a very when we've talked about for the last 2 weeks about the kingdom, I don't feel like that's a very kingdom view of the world, where some things are just for us. I think that's how Christians view the world. Some things are just for us, right? That's the sheep and the goats.
Or that's
the jewels on my crown and all that kind of stuff. Some things
she
are just
and her
for us.
family are just straight out espousing, survival of the fittest on this album.
Yeah, and I understand. All that I say is that you sound very angry about that. This doesn't seem like a conversation, and so therefore,
I think that sums it up. If to take what is being. To take the themes that are on that album, those are themes that should have been reserved for conversations and not preachiness on an album. I would love to sit down with any of the Knowles or all of the Knowles and break bread and have alcohol of choice or whatever and try to have loving conversations and disagreements on this stuff.
I'm really proud of you for not saying a stereotypical...
A 40?
Oh, no. I thought you were going to say Hennessy.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, that was impressive.
No Hennessy. No Courvoisier. Well, maybe with a cigar.
Oh, we got racist just now. We might have to...
It's all love. Look, music rarely works being preachy, and that was preachy. And you appreciated the music more than I did. Even you telling me that it's like modern jazz, I still didn't like it. It just was. Alicia Keys can pull off she gets preachy in some of her stuff. She just does a lot better. Again, you want to stick a Alicia Keys album in there where she's talking about being a black woman. That would have been a much better appropriate choice. I still probably wouldn't have said it's a top 100, but Alicia Keys can sing. She's a fantastic musician. She writes pretty good lyrics. And again, I would have been like, yeah, I'm not the guy to say whether or not this should be on the list or not. But 100% more over this one. So, sorry, Solange. Seriously, I think I'm going to try to listen to other stuff to just see what else she's done. So I don't have this negative an attitude.
Next beer?
It's not gonna. Yeah, and then I looked at the next, and it's not gonna get any better for me. Maybe for you, but not for me.
No, I didn't. I don't have anything good to say about this album either. Nolan's upset that he missed tonight's podcast. I texted him. I said,
we might not have a podcast if Nolan was here tonight anymore.
I said we just made a Hennessy Black.
We might have just banned ourselves from Apple if based on what we just said. I don't know. We didn't say anything controversial.
No. This is an odd beer.
We might have said something controversial.
Oh yeah? What was it?
Well, it might have been controversial for some, but there was nothing in there that we said that was hateful or anything. It just I'm confused, I'm confounded, but I got nothing but love for the Knowles.
Are we still recording right now?
Yeah, we are.
No.
because it's easier for me to edit when I was chopping stuff up, it was fine to chop up. But anyway, so I'll chop up later. But
I was like, the black people in the Hennessy joke might be borderline.
well, if you're offended by that, then just
Go to hell.
no, just imagine something that crackers like, and then make a joke about it, and we're even.
Yeah.
I made a joke
Because we crackers have our own problems.
I was like, I made a joke about us having mayonnaise as hot sauce. So
there you go. And just so you know, us crackers are getting shit on in this list anyway, because there's only one country album, and it's barely country.
Yeah.
And there's not one on the Rolling Stone Rolling Stone list. So, what's up with that? Ooh, this is kind of weird.
I told you it was weird. All right.
Don't like the smell.
Our next IPA is Society and Coronado have a pairing.
That is Society and Coronado beer had a baby for sure.
This is a
No. Never mind. I was thinking of Belching Beaver. Never mind.
This is a double IPA collab. According to Rosie's, a place nearby that sells these cans, it was called the Fantastic Double IPA. It is made with Citra, Simcoe, and HBC 586 hops. I don't know what our ABV is on this. 8.5. Tim is currently plugging his nose trying to taste this.
It tastes better without that nose. That nose is, I don't know what that is, but that is funky.
I don't know. I think it tastes pretty good. It's kind of like
Oh, man. What is that?
It's like 586.
There's some nose on it. It's not my favorite. I mean, it's not ruining the beer. I wouldn't kick her out of my bed at night.
That's a great bit. Yeah, beer's pretty tasty. Also,
It is.
If you're sitting there and you're thinking,
I'm going to let it sit for a little bit.
if you're sitting there and thinking to yourself that that we've gone through a lot of beers, Tim and I are limiting ourselves to half pours. We're gonna try to keep doing that moving forward, just to taste stuff and bring the rest of the stuff to Kauai to give other people the chance to taste it, and also
Colton can't afford a DUI.
yeah.
I can afford a DUI. I work out of the house.
I gotta win a championship before I can afford a DUI. I gotta get my water polo team to win a championship.
Well, you're working. You got your knee going for you there, so you can claim you're on pain pills.
There we go.
Sorry, inside jokes.
And we don't leave. We don't leave. It's not that we get trashed on the show or we get drunk on the show, but also we've talked about cutting back on the amount of drinking that we're doing during the week and all that kind of stuff. So health purposes, and so if you see us and ask about how it's going, try to keep us honest about it. So next album 92, Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy album. Tim, what did you think? Again, this is a hip hop album. Came out 2017.
I'm useless for this album. This album went right over my head. It was fine, but it so didn't resonate. Look, it's not bad. It's so. I am not in a position to offer a helpful opinion on this. I'll say there. I'll say I know the little I know about 21st century music. I can't imagine this. I don't know. I have no idea. It didn't resonate with me. I don't even know if it should be on a top 100 list.
So Tyler the Creator is kind of like a. I don't know. It's kind of like a hipster pick where people are like, "Ooh, have you heard Tyler the Creator? He's probably like the best artist that's out there right now." So yeah, it's kind of a little hipster bit. He's actually kind of emo rap kind of thing where he just And he's not even like the first person to do emo rap, so he's not original in that. He has this jazz fusion with hip hop. Again, that's not new either.
I enjoyed some of that.
So this album is a jazz fusion with hip hop. Tyler's flow. So when we're talking about rap music, flow is usually kind of the way that they sound when they rap. It's very similar to that of Tech Nine, if anybody knows who Tech Nine is. It just makes him really aggressive on the mic. So his flow is very aggressive. It's not smooth. It's very harsh, which some people really enjoy in rap music. It's not really for me. The aggressive approach just kind of makes it, and with the jazz kind of thing, I just don't really feel like it fits that much. I think it's a good album. Again, I love the jazz influence, but it doesn't make it a great album for me. And the reason why it doesn't make it a great album is this album does not exist without the album To Pimp a Butterfly, which came out in 2015. It is not better lyrically or musically. So that even though it has the jazz fusion, To Pimp a Butterfly did that, but it did it better. His lyrics were personal to him. Kendrick's were more important to him. And so here's why I bring this up and why I compare the two is because To Pimp a Butterfly is not on Apple Music's Top 100. And so if you include this album, but you do not include To Pimp a Butterfly, which I don't believe that this album exists without To Pimp a Butterfly, then you can't put this album on the list, in my opinion. I don't think you can. It's not any hate to Tyler, the Creator's album, but I will never. In all honesty, I would never say that this is a top 100 album. I think if this is your type of rap music that you like to listen to, I could definitely see somebody just enjoying this as like a Saturday afternoon, and just tossing this on in the background. But even then, I feel like his voice is so aggressive that it's really not great. So his flow it's just too aggressive. He gets credit from others for being open and emotional with his fans, but I can think of lots of artists who have done the same or better compiled albums and are not recognized on this list. So like just because you're open about, and here's also one of the things where I feel like it might just be one of those token things where we need a representative is, he came out as bisexual, and so that's where a lot of people are like, oh, he's so this or that, just because,
that doesn't make you an interesting person.
The rap community doesn't accept those types of people, and so therefore he kind of it was almost there have been several times where it seems like people pull that card out of where they weren't that way before, and then out of nowhere they pull that card, and all of a sudden they get way more popular, or they get way more screen time or whatever coverage just because they pull that card.
Color me skeptical.
So it's just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, so are we giving Tyler, the Creator? And I have no problem with him being bisexual at all, but I'm just like, okay, so this album is...
No, but again, that doesn't make you inherently interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't make this album inherently good just because you talked about your struggles with bisexuality, and after the album came out and people were speculating, you all of a sudden were just like, yep, you all got it right, I'm bisexual, after I just rapped about it for 10 straight songs. So, yep, there you go. That's my ideas on Flower Boy by Tyler, the Creator. Good. Not something that I think is a top 100 album. You know what we're going to have to do after all of this is we're going to actually have to compile our own top 100 album list.
Oh, I don't... Yeah.
It's okay. We have our summer off.
I mean, based on what I've already said... by the way, To Pimp a Butterfly was 19 on Rolling Stone list.
And it does not exist.
And it doesn't exist
on Apple Music.
Yeah, I mean, we could take a crack at it.
We'll put it out.
We have a broad group of friends who might be able to help us out, so we get like more of a consensus.
Yeah. That'll be good.
Because that happened with the movies that we did. It was me and a bunch of 20-year-olds, and other than Colton, there was a lot of shit on the top 25 list, if I'm being honest. It was like, oh, that might be your favorite movie, but I don't know if it's the best movie.
Yes, that was.
If we're doing a favorite movie list, this is acceptable, but that's what's hard. Favorite, like, if I put my top favorite list, there would be albums on there that shouldn't sniff like greatest, but I'm like, no, this is an amazing, fantastic. A lot of them I've talked about on this podcast when we're doing music of the week, like the Doves and
Extreme.
Stone Roses. Anyway, all right. And then now we're getting to some. Now we're starting to get into little more established.
More acceptable.
Even on some of the albums next week, because we got 2 left. And next week,
We have 3.
there's going to be some albums that, but we'll like them. We're not getting it. I think we're still maybe debating whether or not they should be on a list, but
Now
I can see it.
Yeah, exactly. So we have album 91, Listen Without Prejudice, Volume 1 by George Michael. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Which also, wait, before we get started.
No, I went first the last 2. You can go first.
No. I still think that you should go first, but I did want to recognize that Tim, on this show, we've talked about George Michael before.
Yeah.
You watched the documentary.
I watched the Netflix documentary.
Yeah. So, I mean,
George Michael is not someone I appreciated when I was his contemporary, but I didn't dislike him, but I remember being, well, I'm not his contemporary. He's probably 10 years older than me. I was 6th grade, I think, when Jitterbug came out. So I'm 5th, 6th grade when 5th, 6th, 7th grade in that, well, 6th grade when they hit their peak with
Wake Me Up
Before You Go to, yeah, and those 2 songs, and then he spends, then I get to, I remember getting to high school, and he's got he's now dating supermodels, and he's got them in his music videos like Father Figure. Father Figure, I think is a fantastic song. It's a weird song. I don't think anyone will ever know what the fuck's going on in that song. It is a gorgeous music video with a gorgeous, I think, Danish supermodel. She was big at the time. It's a great song. But even then, it was always like, yeah, but George Michael's, he's a fag and he's a weirdo. And so you can't really fully accept that he's really good. So I didn't start appreciating him until last year when the documentary came out. I started appreciating him more. I just started listening more, going back and listening to 80s music and stuff like that, and just starting you know what? I never fully appreciated how good this guy's voice was, which is funny because my parents could both sing. My dad was trained in music school, and he went to Christian music school. He traveled in a a gospel band.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's still a couple hymns that I can't hear without crying because my dad would sing them in church as solos. My mom played the piano. She couldn't read. She can't read. She's still alive. She can't read sheet music, but you give her 2 minutes and she can just sit there and start playing it on the piano. She can sing as well. So anyway, I grew up in a musical family. I just never appreciated how good of a singer he was. This album was the first album where I definitively this should definitely be on this list. It is George Michael at his peak. It doesn't have Freedom's one of his big hits. I'm sure it's on Spotify and Apple's probably top 3. It's his as a single. It's one of his, if not the top hit. But that album is an album put together by a well-rounded album put together by somebody who knows literally all genres of music. I mean, he doesn't have country in there. Well, he flirts a little bit with it. He's got Latin beats.
Musician.
He's got Latin beats in it. He's got old classic jazz. By that I mean like 20s and 30s jazz with big bands and a singer behind it, in front of it. He's got pop. He's got a little bit of rock. It's got everything in there. The songs are great. There's a song on there that's haunting about what's it called? Mother's Pride, about a mom who's lost her husband to a war, and now she's losing her son to the military and or the war, and it's I don't think I'd ever heard the song before, and I played it like 3 or 4 times. And it's not just because it's like you don't have to be a pacifist to hear it. You're just like, it's a song where we can, as Americans, since 9/11, like there's generations of families that we know of where dad's gone off to war, maybe not even died, but just come home different. And now the son's going to go off and he's going to come home different. And that's what this song's about. So it's a fantastic album. It's George Michael. His voice is amazing. He produces it. That's the thing I didn't fully appreciate until I saw the documentary, that he's his own producer.
Yeah.
There might be a producer that the record label insists is in the room. He's producing his songs. He's producing the album. And damn if that guy isn't he is underappreciated. We need to do everything again to appreciate this guy after his death as just a phenomenal lost gem that we didn't get enough of. I would have loved to have seen him get old and get out of his I don't love myself enough phase, which comes through even on this album. Like, he's struggling with it. Like, he's just coming to terms of understanding, like, I'm not whatever people think of me, or I'm not the guy who likes guys that my dad might not approve of, or whatever was going on in George's head. He's like finally starting to work it out, but we know he still didn't work it out because he was still like hooked on the drugs every once in a while and stuff like that. So, but it's great. I mean, he's very honest and vulnerable in his lyrics. It's just, again, first album on here, I was like, 100% I could see this on it. Irony, although it's not on Rolling Stone's album list, so.
I think, actually, this is what I like about the top 100 list. And I texted you after I had finished listening Without Prejudice. I texted you immediately and I said, hey, this album's fantastic. But that's what I wanted from this top 100 list, was even if I don't necessarily agree.
Absolutely.
I wanted an opportunity to get exposed to artists out there, and again, get to know some history around music. That's why I take every single one of these artists seriously. I'm like, okay, what is your impact? What is going on? And so George Michael, again, first off, I just want to say, I like what he says at the beginning, because I think that George Michael was out to prove something. I just like the name of the album, Listen Without Prejudice.
Yeah.
Where it's don't put me in a box.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's what this album did. It was stop putting me in this box, and I'm trying to fight this idea of you're this pop artist and you just do these gimmicks and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, I'm more than that. And so I said I never listen to these albums, any of them, with prejudice, but I do listen to them with skepticism, especially if they say that they're on a top 100 list. This is my first time listening to this album, and George Michael's solo work. I don't really listen to George Michael's. It's just not in my wheelhouse, excluding Chase Bank credit card commercials where you hear the Freedom song over. I was initially put off by the opening track, Praying for Time. Not because it's bad. I just was like, okay, where's this album going? But then from there, I feel like, and maybe I should go back and listen to that opening song. But from there, I really got to feel the soul and emotions. Not from Freedom, because Freedom's the second track. So you have the Freedom, which is the big hit, and so it's like, oh yeah, this is, blah, blah, blah. And it's good. You have the choral stuff coming in the background. But really, it comes, George pours out his heart, again, to prove that he's so much more than just a pop guy. In the Stevie Wonder cover, which is the third hit, which is, or the third track, which is They Won't Go When I Go. Which is, I was like, okay, this is it. I was like, I don't even got to listen to the rest of this album. And I mean, like, yes, I do got to listen to the rest of the album. But I'm just saying, like, wow, this was something that was great. The piano's phenomenal on it. And he belts his heart out. After that, he goes to an acoustic guitar, kind of, again, that Spanish thing that you were talking about, with Something to Say. I even think that he has Ron Burgundy playing jazz flute for
yes,
him
he does.
in Soul Free.
Yep.
But it was good. The album is a statement of who George Michael is as a musician. Even though, I swear, I listened to this album, I listened to it that day, and I was like, dude, I can't put my finger on what? I was like, there's another band or musician out there that I swear sounds like this. And so I still say that it's fantastic, even though...
Sounds like Chicago?
No, I didn't think Chicago.
Okay.
I said, even though at times I feel like he does sound like Tears for Fears. So, I was like, go back through. It's the audio effect that he does with his voice in some of the...
Oh, yeah, it's very Roland on the second album, which was actually better than the first album, even though... Everybody loves the world's first album. Yeah, I could see that.
It's just the audio effect. It's not even about him vocally. It's just it was.
They do have similar voices, although George's is much better. But they're similar voices actually. Now I think about it.
Yeah. So that was that wasn't a complaint because I love Tears for Fears. So
this just occurred to me. I think this is the perfect juxtaposition. I think why the Solange album is so disappointing. And then just that whole genre of this is, and again, it's a different worldview. It's a different time. George, even though he's English, the world is very, like the English world for sure, but the world is very much impacted by, he's a Martin Luther King guy like me. So when he's standing up there talking about freedom, it's an expansive, it's an optimistic message that he's talking about. It's an open message.
yeah.
And Solange's is just like, you know what? We're 30 years past. We're just too far, and that's just never going to happen. And so it's just very like pessimistic. Like we're just to agree to disagree and live on our part of town, and you guys live on your part of town, and we'll just like pretend that we can get. We'll just get along, but we're never going to pretend like we're going to be friends. Where George is, George is talking about
social segregation,
right? And George isn't just talking about racial, although he's talking about racial, but he's talking about sexual equality as well, which is fine, whatever. At the time, it was a big deal. I mean, everyone kind of knew. It was like, yeah, this is George kind of saying. So it's an optimistic album and I think that's just why it's just so easier to listen to, even when he's dealing with racial kind of things. Yeah, he's a white dude, but so if you're listening, it's like, what does George Michael know about race? He's a white dude. He's the first generation son of a Greek immigrant to London.
Yeah.
They have the same issues growing up in London, maybe not as harsh.
They're fucking gypsies.
But they're gypsies living in London. Are they dealing with being turned away from at the store for like 1950s, not being served? No. But they're dealing with being called names in school and all the other kind of stuff that just the bullshit people have to put up when they're the minority.
Well, and honestly, there used to be a television show on, I think it was TLC, and it was called My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And it followed kind of the gypsy, what it's like to be a gypsy in the UK. And so they would follow these girls that would have these weddings and that kind of stuff. And yeah, a lot of their influence does come from Greece. And that kind of stuff. And so they're traveling in, and gypsies, and if you've never known what a gypsy is, especially in the UK terms, it means you're a fucking immigrant. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And there's a very specific sect, and you can see how poorly they're treated in the UK, and how it's terrible. What happens to them on a regular basis.
If you've watched the Guy Ritchie movie, you've probably seen them. They're referenced. A lot of them are Irish. They're a combination Irish,
yep.
Irish Italian, Irish Greek, something like that. They live in caravans. They move around from place to place. They're just basically they're outcasts. That was not George's family. They were not that kind of gypsy, but that's talked about in the documentary. So yeah, he's got this idea. You know, he's lived through, and he like. Again, if that you're like, oh, get over it already. Look, as Jesus followers, that's the kind of thing we should be. It's just look, it's an uplifting album. It's great. Again, it's got a nice variety of different kinds of music. It's easily appreciable. I like what you said. These lists should expose you to music that you can appreciate. This is an album that I like nothing. I think I added the Lorde album and then maybe one other we're gonna get to, besides Hotel California, like some of the. But like the new album, like I'd never listened to Lorde. I was like, oh, this is really good. Like now I fully appreciate her. I can see why she's a thing. This one was I knew who George Michael was. I'd probably listened to this before, but it had been more than a minute. It had been a few minutes, and so I was like, oh yeah. This is one I'm going to listen to every once in a while. It's great.
Yeah. 100% agree. It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, we're 2 hours in, so I don't think we're getting to our...
We got 2 more albums to go.
All right.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have album 90. This is the only one of the albums that we're talking about tonight that coincides with Rolling Stone's list. And what album does Rolling Stones put this one at?
It's a good question.
90 on Apple Music's list. And what do we have for the Rolling Stones list? I think it should be all the way at the top, right? Starts with the name.
No, I got it by number.
Oh, you got it by number. I think when you send it to me, it was by name.
Well, I changed the... Let's do a search.
Control F.
84. So we're not far off. Not too far off.
It is Back in Black by AC/DC. So I will say, Tim said that Hotel California is one of the best opening songs on an album. I think that I've listened to a lot of albums from cover to cover. I think Hell's Bells being the opening to Back in Black is one of my favorite openers of all time. I love the entry of the bell, the ominous bell, the come in of the guitar, the come in of the drums, the bass afterwards, and then the vocals, where it all this like it's this kind of like build the entire time towards this crescendo of Hell's Bells. But what I will say is, regardless of your thoughts on the band, AC/DC, their vocals, their devil-themed swag, the front man being replaced a few times. Once,
Three.
Tragic. In that first, and especially at the start of this album, this is
so Brian's actually the third. He's the third and last. So actually, there was one before. Whatever the hell his name is. Yeah,
Johnson. It's before Johnson. You're talking.
Brian Johnson's the current one. But he was the third one.
Brian Johnson stepped down, I thought, right? And then that's where.
Oh no! Well.
Oh, you're not talking about Axl and the. Yeah, you're like no.
No, I'm talking in terms of. What was number 2? Brian was the third lead singer. Most people don't know that, which it's funny that I know that since I can't remember the second guy. So that's what, and yeah, this is, no. Bon Scott, of course. Bon Scott. So Bon Scott dies of alcohol poisoning the night they are partying because their album Highway to Hell had, I think, like gone platinum or something. Anyway, they're partying about something related to the tour. So he drinks too much and dies. Typical rock star. He vomits on himself in his car, I think it was. So, and this was Highway to Hell was the culmination of, I think, 5 or 6 albums. But again, Bon Scott was the second lead singer. I don't know who the first guy was. This is AC/DC peak Highway to Hell. They've now reached the pinnacle. They are touring worldwide. They are scaring the shit out of every suburban mom, whether they're Christian or not, because their boys are wanting to listen to this album called Highway to Hell. They are on the map, and the lead singer dies, and they bring in this guy Brian Johnson, who's English from Newcastle. Who have you ever heard Brian Johnson talk?
Yeah.
No one knows what the fuck he's saying. Like, he has got the weirdest.
Yeah, it's fucking Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, it's like, like even the way he pronounces AC/DC is funny. It's ASTROWORLD.
Yeah.
I thought he was like Welsh or something. No, he's from like Newcastle. It's his accent's. I think it's called Geordie or Gordy. Anyway, yeah, like he's one of those guys. Like, he's like Ozzy Osbourne. Like, I think I got like every third word. But fortunately, his Australian bandmates got him, and so. Yeah, Hell's Bells is laying down the gauntlet. We lost our lead singer, and guess what? We love Bon Scott, but we're not looking back. In fact, we're about to go on a whole new run. We're taking this to the next level.
Yeah, and the second he rips into that mic, you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
AC/DC is back, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm still not done.
Okay,
you
keep
don't
going.
get to go yet. But I say that this album, so, regardless of how you feel about him, this album captures an essence of rock and roll that very few albums ever had, and I think ever will. I think just off of if you want to talk about greatest impact, I mean, go ask Fender how their sales were at the amount of children and teenagers that saved up for guitars because of Shoot to Thrill and Back in Black alone. That should already show the greatness of this album. But yet, I think AC/DC showed they are not just a single sound. Through this album, they have blues inspiration. Like, you listen to the song Rock and Roll's Ain't Noise Pollution. That's a fucking bluesy ass song, dude. It's awesome. It shows a level of respect for who they are as musicians and for their genre of rock and roll. And to put this album in perspective, I think, for anybody out there, if aliens came to Earth and they asked for an example of what rock and roll looks like in an album, and you have countless of other things across your mind, but if Back in Black, the album, doesn't possibly cross your mind, then I think that you should maybe go revisit this Top 100 Albums Classic, because I do think that I know that we were skeptical. AC/DC purists may sit there and say, no, you need to do Highway to Hell instead. Bro, this album is an absolute unit with Hell's Bells, right? That killer opener. You have Back in Black, Shoot to Thrill, Have a Drink on Me, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, right? That's over half of the album.
Well, you left out You Shook Me All Night.
Oh, You Shook Me All Night Long, right? Like, insane. And nobody's questioning what genre AC/DC's in. That's rock and roll. toss on the devil horns, and appreciate the fact that it's at the 90 slot. That's it's a great album. It's not deep by any means, but it's a lot of fun. So I don't know. Thoughts, Tim?
So when I first saw the list, I was, okay, I could see AC/DC on there, but I'm not sure about that album. That seems like somebody who doesn't really know rock music put that on there, and they just sort of like, oh, we'll put AC/DC. So that was my initial thought without not thinking too much about it, because I do love AC/DC, which is funny because I was one of those. When I was in my seventh grade,
he knows that Johnson is the third.
When I was in seventh grade, I steered cleared as old as seventh grade. I steered cleared of them because I thought they might be devil's music. So I was the little Christian boy. Then I saw Rolling Stones list and they had it on there as well, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm wrong here. And the other albums I thought were Highway to Hell and For Those About to Rock.
For Those About to Rock, yeah.
I looked at those two albums, and I looked at Back in Black, and it's not even close. It's just not even close. Like, there are, as a AC/DC fan, there are things on For Those About to Rock. Well, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. That's the song that's fantastic. That's one of my favorite songs.
Oh yeah. You just love the bagpipes. I get you.
Ride On is one of my there are non top of the list songs on those two albums that
Which one is Whole Lot of Rosie on?
Whole Lot. That's like TNT or one of the
yeah,
it
is that one. It's a Johnson.
No, that's a Bon Scott song. Yeah, it's a Bon Scott song.
Oh, okay.
Like Right On, I think is the last song on Highway to Hell, which is very ironic because that's the last song, and it's also the last song they recorded on that album. So, with what we come to find out, and I heard Norah Jones do a fantastic cover of that live. Anyway. If you're going to do an AC/DC album, it absolutely has to be Back in Black for all the reasons that Colton laid out. There's 6 hits. There are 6 songs on there that you arguably, if you've got a oldies / classic rock station in your area, any one of those songs can get played during a week.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 of those are going to get played multiple times during the week. So, absolutely deserves to be on the 100 list. AC/DC, as a fan of Van Halen, I would like to say that Van Halen gets on that list somewhere, but really, AC/DC's that band that just kind of intersects all of the hard rock.
Yeah.
All the hard rock music. It connects the dots from the late 70s, early 80s music of Ozzy Osbourne's band.
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath and those bands. It connects Van Halen in the mid-80s bands and the hair bands that kind of connect that whole like decade of like 76, decade and a half of 76 to about 90, 91. AC/DC is the one that's right in the middle of that, and they keep going. I mean, Thunderstruck, everyone I think had already kind of figured AC/DC was dead. Like they weren't doing anything else. Now they were just going to start doing the Rolling Stones tour of Angus Young continuing to wear his little boy British schoolboy outfit until he was 80 years old, which he's still doing, but that was it. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere in like 89 or something, they put out another banger with the Thunderstruck album of this just iconic with an amazing Thunderstruck.
And then the music video is great.
And the music video is fantastic. and they just keep going.
If You Want Blood, when does If You Want Blood come out?
I think it's that same album. I think they did one more good album after that, and then after that, guys start having health issues because they're getting up there, and those guys, I've seen them live twice. There are some bands that put on a show, and they put on a show. I mean, they
bring out a fucking bell.
Yeah,
They were in Fresno.
The Young brothers are both little scrawny guys. Like they're not. Neither one of them look like a guitar player or a drummer, but I guess they're so freaking skinny that they just like. But anyway.
Well, the drummer fucking smokes cigarettes.
They are everything that connects. Like I said, everything from Black Sabbath to Van Halen to Metallica. That everything kind of, whether or not Metallica would accept that they're influenced by AC/DC or not, and Black Sabbath I think predates at least AC/DC becoming popular, but that's where all hard rock, the peak of hard rock intersects with AC, and it's what rock should be. It's stupid shit listened to by 14-year-old boys.
Yeah. And you know what? And after this conversation, I, without a doubt, can say that this is the first album on the list that I feel like is iconic.
Yeah, absolutely. From the album cover to everything else.
We talked about the greatness and the different levels of what it can be based off originality, all that kind of stuff. To get back all the way back to the beginning 2 hours ago. But I'm saying that this one is, it's iconic. This is one where it's like, what this is. Even I know lots of people that don't like, AC/DC. But I know that they know the words to Hell's Bells and You Shook Me All Night Long.
Yeah,
They know the guitar riff to Back in Black. They know the down,
right.
And yeah, it's the whole. Everybody knows it, and also, shout out to.
I mean, this song is this is as much a bar song as Sweet Caroline is.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't care.
You Shook Me All Night Long.
Yeah, She Shook Me All Night Long. Yeah, it's just
that's a karaoke.
Yeah.
Go for it right there. Have everybody trying to freaking scream their hearts out to figure that one out. And it's a great, fantastic album. Again, here's also the thing that we talked about where, it's so funny that this one comes after George Michael, right? Where we're talking about this is his depth.
Yeah.
He shows that he has multiple genres. AC/DC was like, yeah, this is what we are.
No, I mean,
like I said, there's blues, obviously.
There's some blues in there, but these are guys, they know who they are, they know what they're about, and they just do it well. They do it not well. They do it exceptionally well. They're the guy who shows up. There are football teams with 20 plays, 30 plays, and they're going to wow you with this big playbook, and there's one that just shows up and says, we're going to run five plays over and over again, and you're not going to stop us. Yeah, because we just do it so freaking well. You know it's coming, and we're still going to beat you. And that's exactly what these guys are just like, yeah, we know what we are. Yeah, we're not here to surprise you. Yeah, we're here. It's a very loud, warm blanket that we're going to put over you.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal.
You mentioned Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. That's actually my favorite all-time AC/DC song.
That's funny. I
love that
fantastic.
song.
It's up there as one of my top 5. Although special place in my heart for Have a Drink on Me. So, but yeah, no, I love Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. And no, if you sit there and you think about, and that song in particular, and why I don't mind spending some time on this podcast to talk about it, is if you sit there and you think about that song as being bluesy, and then you listen to it, you are like, oh, damn. You're like, this has got it. and he's put so much soul in the inflection and the way that he's singing it. You're just like
the way that song is written and the way it's recorded, it's got the vibe of Brian's in there smoking a pack of cigarettes, singing, talking, and then singing this thing as they're doing it. It's just like he's just sitting there like you've shown up for like a live jam, and he's just like, we really love rock music, and we're gonna play a little something different. It's not like crazy different.
It's not crazy different. Like I said, it's a little bluesy. It's
right.
Not like you're still like, yeah, this is AC/DC through and through. But
we're gonna go away from the balls to the wall, and we're gonna slow it down a tad.
Yeah, and it's fantastic, that album, and the fact that they end the album with that is just like, boom.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of like a tribute to, again, it's almost like that tribute to, what's the one with the bagpipes?
Right on. For those about to rock. That, which is another one of my favorites.
It's almost kind of like that, where it's like, yeah, this is our wrap up, where it's, we're talking about rock here, and everybody, you better hop on board with this one. So it's great.
They know who they are. They're not apologetic.
And like I said, if you don't think that if aliens come to us and they say, we want an example of what rock and roll looks like, and you don't, if Back in Black doesn't cross your mind, you need to give this album another listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so the last one
of this interesting podcast that we're doing tonight.
Lady Gaga, The Fame Monster, which is her third or fourth album.
I don't know. You know more about Lady Gaga than I do.
I think it was her third album.
Tim has been to a Lady Gaga concert.
I've been to a Lady Gaga concert, so I'll give my background on Lady Gaga. At the time this album came out, was not a Gaga fan. My awareness of Gaga was she,
wears meat at
meat dresses to things, and is like a strange product of Manhattan socialite parents, and
you probably were like, she's trying to be the new Madonna. I got it.
100%, and I think if she says otherwise, I think she's lying to herself. She was very much. There was a lot of. Well, to one extent, that's unfair. Madonna's got a tenth of the musical talent she does. Madonna's not nearly on the planet of a singer she has, and I don't think she understands. Like, Gaga's got a music. Like, I think Gaga spent her time taking piano lessons and musical lessons. She knows music. Madonna lived in a poor Detroit family, and she's got a marginally decent voice and is a very good entertainer. But in that same respect, I think either Gaga, because she wanted to become famous, or the label because they wanted to get her out there, I would say yes, followed kind of the same thing of this sort of, we're going to shock mom and dad at home with the meat puppet, with the meat dresses, and we're going to do the strange things. And I frankly, some of her hits, I didn't even know were hers for years. So I was unaware of her. She went and sang, I think, the national anthem at a Super Bowl. And I was like, oh, she can sing, because this national anthem is a really hard song to sing. She nailed it. I'm like, okay.
It wasn't a national anthem for me. There was like an award show or something, and she came on, or maybe it was like a tribute.
Okay.
Type thing, like where it was like, okay, we're doing a tribute to this particular artist, and she came out no auto-tune. And I remember all of us as a family, I was like probably 20 years old. I was living at home with my parents going to COS, and everybody was in the living room, and we walk out, and a blonde chick comes on and starts singing this song. We're like, damn, this chick's killing it.
Yeah.
And then it flashes across the screen, Lady Gaga singing whatever song as a tribute to whoever had, died or whatever. And the funniest part was, like, me and my dad at the same moment were just like, oh shit! Damn, girl can actually sing. Like
So, yeah, and she does kind of. It's not like the first album we did, Robyn, but her first couple albums lended towards a nightclub, dance club kind of pop. Like
100%.
it's very driven, like boom, boom, boom. It's very so. That's just not my kind of music. It's like, 100%. Like, you know, if my kids had asked me, I was like, yeah, she sucks. But it's just me kind of playing the old dad thing. I'm like, yeah, it's just not my thing. Fast forward to Star is Born comes out. I don't see it right away, but I'm hearing great things. I'm a huge Bradley Cooper fan. I was a fan of his all the way back to when he was on TV show Alias. And I'm hearing great things about it and how Gaga is. So finally see it. And she just blows me away with, one, she's a really good actress in the thing, which I think counts for something. And then just the music. I find out she's done the music. And the music in this thing is just gorgeous. It's one of the best soundtracks. So I immediately like, okay, if this is who she can be, then I'm all on this side of Gaga. I'm still not in on like early Gaga, but I'm all in on what Gaga can be, to the point where me and another couple go to Vegas for a couple days. We see her doing her Tony Bennett tribute big jazz band album, and it concert at the MGM, and it lives up to everything we were expecting. She's an entertainer. I will say, she's a little weird. And I'm not kidding. This is not being facetious. She leans in a little bit to the occult kind of shit that we talk about. Like, there's a little bit of like.
She probably buys her beer from Hen House, is what you're saying.
She buys her beer from Hen House. She might have had a meeting with a dude at a crossroads in Louisiana when she was 17. Not really sure. If you don't understand, look up Crossroads. So, love Gaga. I had, much like Lorde, you're going to say, this is crazy. I had not listened to the Fame Monster. Had no interest in. Like, I like Gaga now. I'm not in on early Gaga. I have no interest, but I listened to the album. It's an excellent album. It didn't really change my opinion of early Gaga. Again, a lot of the songs are the same. It's kind of the same driving. We're at a nightclub. We're at a dance, some big dance thing. They're all kind of that. In fact, the song that I really love was one that was different. It's slowed down. It's called Speechless, and it's a couple breaking up, I think, is what the song's about. So, and part of that's just because it fits more my musical taste. But I heard that, I was like, oh, yeah, see, that's the kind of Gaga that I really like, where it kind of isn't just this driving electronic pop. But, you know, the hits that are on there, I do enjoy those. And so it's a perfectly good album. I wouldn't put it on my top 100, although 100% I can see why at this point. I think this is another album that I don't know will be there in 20 years.
Yeah.
But it should be here now. And that said, this is not an album that was on Rolling Stone's album list. But I'm comfortable enough to say who Gaga is as someone who's kind of not only, again, if this is a music appreciation and kind of charting like best albums, it's kind of hard not to leave it off, because I think this is the best of her first three albums. It's the best of her albums, period. Like she started straying from, and so I think, frankly, after that, that's when she started going away from the stuff that her fans were really expecting of her. And it's kind of like, well, I'm not sure. That's the irony. It's like, I'm not really sure I'm into this Gaga. Yeah. Caveat: album. Apple has their deluxe version on the list. The actual album was 9 songs. I like the 9 songs. It's a nice, tight album. The deluxe version, how about you take it over now?
Yeah. So
because I didn't know what you were gonna.
The deluxe version is the initial part is 9 songs, and then it's an additional 15 songs after that. So you're looking at 24 songs.
And you said the deluxe version won Grammys on its own.
Yeah. So no, it was, she released disc 1. Which got Grammys, and then released disc 2, which then received Grammys.
Wow.
So again, but it was a part of this like this 2-part where a couple of artists have done this where it's not released all together. It's released like a year ahead of when it gets released. Like the next year, the second part of the album comes out. Justin Timberlake did this with the 2020 Experience, and they both won Grammys for that kind of stuff. It's just it's almost kind of like, hey, this is a work in progress kind of thing. I don't know why they do it, but they get acclaim for it. The easiest thing to say about this album is that there are 24 songs on this album, and every single one of them could have been a pop hit on the radio station.
Yeah, 100%, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because I think I felt like the additional album 2 was just more of the same, but I guess that's the half glass full, and I think you're correct. And like it's just more. If you like that, it's more of.
Yeah.
Where I don't, and I guess I'm not that big of a fan of Gaga.
Right, and
that part of Gaga. So it's like I don't need more. I don't need another 12, 13 songs of this.
Right,
But
and I talked about on the Robyn where I was like, yeah, there was no change. Like where it was like I didn't get a slowed down or something. And when I'm listening to an album, when I think of an album, I want that, right? Like I want an upbeat one. I want to slow it down. I want something personal. I want something that's sometimes not personal. But that doesn't exist in this album. This album is looking for like it's almost like we're gonna put out 24 songs that could all be a hit on the radio station, into which it's just gonna be whatever sticks with the people.
yeah,
That's basically what it is. And for all of that, for me to sit there and say, 24 songs and all of them are going to be pop hits, a lot of them were. Bad Romance, hit. Alejandro, hit. Telephone, hit. Just Dance, hit. Love Game, hit. Paparazzi, hit. Poker Face, hit. Starstruck, hit. All of those were played on the radios and not in micro amounts.
No, I mean there's again this is where I'm like if I was on the Apple list, I'd be like, I'm going to sit back here in the room and let you guys figure this out, because I am not qualified. This would not be on my list, but it would be it's a travesty not to put it on the list with that many hits. I mean, you have that many hits, it's got to be on a list.
Yeah, and most artists, when they release an album, they hope for 2 to 3 songs.
Unless you have just like zero, unless you're a total elitist who has got who thinks that both radio directors and consumers have zero musical taste. It's like at some point, it's like she's knocking it out of the park. It's got to be on a list.
Yeah. And again, most people are looking for 2 to 3 songs on their album to get played at least once across the era.
Right, so and we're not in an era where there's not enough female pop artists.
Oh yeah, exactly. So she's an artist who clearly knows what she's doing, and I believe that
which is why I think she's
an entertainer,
made a deal with the devil.
The way that she presents herself is not a facade. I don't think buy into that. She's bold. I think she's daring. I think she's talented, and like we said, she has a set of pipes that can back all that shit up.
Her voice is second to none.
I think she's in every sense a pop icon. That being said, I agree with Tim. The album is just not for me.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, if you're feeling like I'm giving her a lot of love, I have a lot of respect for her. The synth techie pop thing is just not for me.
It's not going to be on my. It's not on my list of stuff. You know what I'm going to listen to today is Gaga. No.
Yeah, no. This will probably be the one and only time that I listen to this album.
Right. If I want to listen to Gaga, I'm going to pull up the Stars Born soundtrack and listen to that.
But I have nothing but respect for her ability to reach Madonna level magnitude.
Yeah.
With what it is that she's doing, because it was great. So. It was a great album for what it was that she was trying to achieve. Like I said, it'll probably be the one time that I ever listen to it. But nothing but props for Lady Gaga. Nothing but good things to say.
And that'll be the last informative, nice thing you're going to hear me say about any female pop albums from here on out.
Wow.
It's not my thing, man. When we get to Beyonce, I'm going to probably be like...
We still have Madonna to go.
Wow, Madonna.
Like a prayer, bro.
No, that one. So,
We're just going to go ahead and wrap this up. I feel like we were on our soapbox about Solange, so.
I had to let it out.
Deep
We were on our
exhale.
soapbox.
We will be taking a break from our our top 100s countdown. Next week we're gonna have a guest speaker on, which we're excited to have on.
Yeah, we're gonna have a guest speaker. Frankly, he works for me. He's worked for me for about 15 years. Colton knows him from working NASCAR events and some of the football games that we've done. So they know each other. And this guy is a volunteer worship arts musician. And so he'd heard one of our recent episodes. That was about a month ago or 6 weeks ago. He heard one of our recent rants, complaints, observations about modern worship music, and he, I would say, partially agrees, but he wanted to come on and offer some of his insight as to someone who's actually been on a band, which I think will be good, because I think it'll be a good opportunity for us to hear what he has to say, and also I think talk about, Colton and I aren't consumers of music when we go to church, but a lot of people are. So maybe give us a chance to let you guys know who listen to this and maybe even agree with it. Probably agree with this. Maybe agree with this on worship arts, but everybody get a good opinion of how this is like a lot of things at church. Not one of those jobs anybody should look forward to do, and you're in a no-win situation. Frankly, right. You're just in a no-win situation. You've got probably at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 constituencies within a church who want their kind of music played, and it's a no-win situation, and you run the risk of pleasing everyone, which pleases no one, or pleasing one group, and so it's like a lot of church. Chris will give us a good insight as to what that means. And we'll also maybe get a few stories, because I think somebody at his specific church, he's at one of those churches that has multiple satellites. I think his specific satellite has a band member who plays for Katy Perry. So maybe we pull some stories out of him from that, if he feels like he can share them on a podcast. So we thank you for listening to what was supposed to be. At some point, we'll get to the kingdom.
We talked about it a little bit.
We didn't plan on going on this long. We're not going to be able to talk about music this much. Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll turn this into like 20 weeks of talking about music, but 3 or 4 albums instead of 10. Or we'll just have less to say, which I don't know if it's going to be helpful. Anyway. We thank you for listening to what was a very enjoyable episode of the Go to Hell podcast for this week, which is not about Christianity.
It wasn't parts. Come on, man.
The church and beer. It was music and beer.
With sprinklings of Christianity.
Christianity. Yeah, sprinklings of Christianity. There's Christianity is always sprinkled in everything, including when we swear. Please subscribe, rate, and review. And if you think we hate Solange, you can go to hell. We just don't really like that album. But we don't hate her. I don't hate her.
I don't hate her either.
Peace out.